Good morning everyone, Gadget here for Henry's, and we just got out of the Fujikina 2019 event where Fuji has announced the new GFX-100. Welcome to the Henry's First Look. This is Fuji's third camera in the GFX line, a medium format line that they pioneered in 2017. What's unique about this camera is that they take it up and over 100. Yes, you heard that right. This camera shoots over 100 megapixels. Now, as Fuji mentioned, this camera uses a backside illuminated 102 megapixel large format sensor. They're calling it the large format sensor. Most people know it as medium format. This is 70% larger than your full frame sensors. When you pick up this camera, it immediately feels like a professional's camera. It doesn't have the same rubberized texture that you'd find in the X-T3 or the XH1 or even the GFX-50R. It has more of a flattened rubber approach, if that makes sense. It's a little bit harder, it doesn't have that same leathery texture. On the body itself, there's a two-tone color display where you have this gunmetal finish at the top and at the bottom. Another thing that Fuji has gone away with is the analog dials that you would see on their X series cameras or even their GFX cameras up until this point. On the left-hand side, you have the drive mode dial that you can use to switch between photography, multi, and still modes, holding down the button here, and two unnamed dials at the front and the back to control, for example, your aperture and shutter speed. The GFX-100 has a top sub-LCD as well as a rear sub-LCD, and you can use it to customize a few things. You can toggle between these visual dials so you can see your ISO and shutter speed. You can also view your histogram, or you can use it just to view your settings, whether you're in still or movie mode. What I love about this feature is that even if you turn the camera off, you still get to view what your settings are at. Similarly, with the rear sub-LCD, you can view the exposure compensation, a histogram, or the settings that you're using for this camera. Now, this is definitely a professional's camera, not a walk-around camera, something that you're gonna be shooting with intention, maybe for commercial reasons. And for that, you have a nice grip right on the front. However, when you switch to the portrait orientation here, the grip doesn't provide as much depth as the one that you see here. Further, it doesn't have that rubberized texture, so it does seem a little bit slippery in the hand. Now, you can shoot up to 5 frames per second in 14-bit mode, but this camera actually takes it up to 16. You can shoot 16-bit uncompressed images where the files are a little over 200 megabytes each. That's a lot of information. However, you cannot shoot in continuous mode when you are shooting 16-bit. Now, we were also able to take these raw files and bring them into Capture One. Technically, there's no official support for the GFX-100 yet, but we have the beta running here. We bumped into some of the engineers at the Fujikina event, and they were able to point us to the right direction. We got the beta running, and we have some files here that we can look at from today's event. So this image was shot with the eye detect on with the Fuji GFX-100 sample that we had available to us, and was shot with the 110mm f2 lens. If you want to see how accurate this eye detect is, well, we can go into the head right here of the model, and you see that it's really sharp, but you can actually take it one step further and go into something like this, and you see the individual eyelashes are actually completely in focus, which is just phenomenal to see with this camera. The fantastic thing for photographers, especially professional portrait photographers, is that latitude when it comes to their crop. So you can see here, this is the 100% crop outline here, but you can get in and create a crop that you prefer without losing a lot of information. Again, you have 102 megapixels to work with. There's also the skin smoothing effect on the camera. So if you want to bring in a little bit less detail, a little bit less sharpness in the skin of their face, you can turn this on. It'll only impact the JPEG file, and you have pretty much a head start in your editing process, but it will not impact the raw file as you see here. So you can see that this will maintain all the sharpness, all the information in your raw file. Now, it wasn't enough just to shoot in this controlled environment. We wanted to take the camera out with us to see how it performed handheld, especially with that image stabilization. Looking at the charts and the data that Fuji provided to us, they said you can go comfortably handheld as low as 1/15 of a second to grab images. And this was shot in the streets of Tokyo. And if you want to see how powerful this camera is, we can crop in just to this individual's face, and you can see that their eyelash here is in focus. There is no blurriness to that, and you can see the clear structure of their face. And this was another shot done handheld from a staircase above a level through a window. The camera was able to pick up the face with the face detect, and when we zoom in, once again, you can see the level of detail that you have available to you, clearly seeing the glasses of this gentleman outlined. Now, we talked about ISO and how it goes up to 102,400. Fuji was saying that these are extremely manageable ranges and you can get some fantastic images at this ISO. We want to put it to the test and we will do further testing in our full review, but in our quick time here, this was shot at 1/60th of a second at 102,400 ISO, and I will say that these shots are usable. So if you work in journalism, if you need to capture the shot by any means necessary, it's great to have this, but for most professionals, you simply won't be using this setting. And once you zoom in, you can see that there's a lot of this fixed pattern noise that'll essentially ruin a lot of your images. And if you actually look to bring up the shadows in this case, it becomes even more prevalent. Again, it's fantastic to have this for those of you that need to capture an image by any means necessary, but it's not something that a lot of photographers with this camera will be utilizing. The GFX-100 takes 2 SD card slots. Fuji is saying that this is fast enough for all the data that they're looking to capture. What'll be interesting to me is seeing how well the buffer keeps up, especially when you're shooting in burst mode. On the back, you have a very minimalist display. There's a few customizable buttons that you can tweak to control whatever feature you want to control, as well as your typical focusing menu display options. There's also the back LCD, which is a 3-way tilt LCD that Fuji is known for. For ports, you have the mini HDMI, USB-C, as well as charging port on the left, and of course a headphone out and microphone in. The GFX-100 houses 2 of Fuji's G-series batteries, so you can expect up to twice as much battery life as you'd find in the GFX-50R or 50S. The one thing that caught me though is when you actually put the battery compartment back, it doesn't just lock in by itself. You actually have to twist it to lock it back into place. Now let me talk about their EVF. You're looking at over 5.7 million dots in this display right here, and it looks gorgeous. When you're looking through this thing, it does an amazing job of showing you what you're shooting. It almost looks true to life. Looking through this viewfinder and then going back to something else, you see a stark difference. What's powering this camera is the new X Processor Pro, the same processor that you'll find in the X-T3 and X-T30. But what Fuji really wants you to know is that the autofocus is almost twice as fast, if not more, compared to the previous G-series cameras. They have a new phase detect autofocus system that covers the entire sensor and ensures that you're able to capture your subject even in low light environments. The new GFX-100 is also equipped with a 5-axis in-body stabilization system. That's probably what adds to a little bit of this bulk. What's remarkable is that a sensor this size, again about 70% larger than a full-frame sensor, is being stabilized in real time, up to 5.5 stops of stabilization. Speaking to the engineers at Fujifilm, they tell us that the in-body image stabilization took about 1.5 years to develop, and this is on top of the 1.5 years it took to develop the in-body image stabilization for the XH1. So you're looking at about 3 years of total experience to get this to work the way they want it to. And I'll tell you right now, the image stabilization was phenomenal. When we were testing it out at night at 1/15th or 1/30th of a second, it was simply impressive. And again, this is from a large format camera. So while this isn't necessarily meant for run and gun shooters, it seems like you can get away with a lot with this camera. The camera itself can shoot 4K 30p, 420 internally or 422 externally, which is quite a feat for, again, a medium format camera. Now Fujifilm is no stranger to cinema lenses, but what I'll be interested to see is if we can expect a cinema lens for the G-mount. And you know Fujifilm is serious about video on this camera when they include the Eterna film simulation. It's their little recipe to give you a more flattened profile that's easier to edit in post. This is clearly an important release for Fujifilm. They're trying to make their mark as the premier camera manufacturer in the market, and they're not afraid to be aggressive in this space. Again, we're talking about a medium format camera that's priced well below its competition vision for what it offers. And if that wasn't enough, you're getting a lot of features that you just don't get in the medium format space, such as a really good autofocus system, in-body image stabilization, and real video features. Professionals will really appreciate how much you get with the GFX-100. Yes, you get the 102 megapixels, but it's just not that alone that makes this impressive. The fact that you get a phase detect autofocus system that works handheld because of the in-body image stabilization make this a powerhouse system to use. What I'll be interested to find out is, who are they exactly targeting with this? Is there a specific demographic, or are they hoping that this price to feature ratio even attracts some enthusiastic hobbyists? Even though there were a couple of bugs in our testing, this is a pre-production model, and I'm looking forward to the late June release, where you can expect a full review from us to see how much this camera can do when we push it to the absolute limit. Thank you so much for watching. You can find more information about the GFX-100 in the link below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you know when a new video comes out. I'm Gajan, this has been the Henry's First Look, and we'll see you next time.